So imagine for a second being the absolute most powerful sorcerer in the realm. Like, you have literally spent decades mastering all these arcane rituals.
Right, you can summon dark forces, you command fear from, the highest courts down to the lowest gutters.
Exactly. But despite all of that overwhelming power, you are completely and utterly incapable of scratching a single hair on your enemy's head.
It's such a fascinating paradox.
It really is. And for you listening today, welcome to the deep dive. We are dropping right into that exact terrifying scenario. We're looking at episode 55, which is titled The Serpent King, from the sprawling story Chasing Death.
And what we find in this chapter is basically a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare.
Yeah, it's so good. Our mission today is to unpack the really intricate mechanics of this vengeance. We are going to break down the surprisingly strict rules of dark magic in this world.
Oh, and we definitely have to talk about that massive mythological twist, the one that flips traditional fantasy tropes completely upside down.
Oh, for sure. We will definitely get to that. But to set the stage for you, we are focusing on three individuals caught in a very specific crossfire.
Right, so we have Tamoras, who is this disgraced sorcerer.
We have Zayn, a hero who has absolute divine protection.
And then there's Lila. She's just an innocent handmaiden who unfortunately becomes the focal point of an ancient, terrifying grudge.
So to really grasp the supernatural climax of this source material, we kind of have to look at the psychology driving it first, right?
Absolutely. Because the catalyst for all this elaborate dark magic, it isn't some grand quest for world domination.
No.
It's actually a profoundly human, deeply toxic emotion. It's humiliation.
Yes, humiliation.
Because in a world where magic is inherently tied to perception and authority, public disgrace isn't just emotionally painful, it is metaphysically crippling.
Which really explains why Tamura's situation is just so desperate. I mean, he has just suffered this public, agonizing defeat in the Grand Court.
His reputation is completely in ashes.
Right, so he flees the city, and he takes refuge in this crumbling, forsaken temple of the god Nurgle, and his followers basically treat him like a sinking ship.
Yeah, they recognize that the gods have turned their backs on him, so they abandon him almost instantly.
Like, immediately. He is left with only two fiercely loyal disciples.
And that isolation in the Temple of Nurgle, which is this forgotten subterranean ruin, it perfectly mirrors his internal state.
Oh, that's a great point. He's just stewing in this dark, decaying space.
Exactly. He is consumed by this blinding fury toward Zayn, and the text gives us a brilliant window into his narcissism here.
The vow. We have to talk about the vow.
Yes. Tamoris's ego is so fractured by his defeat that he swears a binding vow. He declares that if he fails to avenge his humiliation and destroy Zayn, the gods should condemn his next incarnation to that of a wretched ape.
A wretched ape. I mean, the specificity of that curse really stands out to me.
It really does. Out of all the horrors an ancient sorcerer could imagine for an afterlife, he chooses the loss of higher intellect.
Because he values his supreme, calculated mind above literally everything else. So the ultimate punishment would be reduction to a base, instinctual beast.
Right. He is terrified of being perceived as lesser, which is, the driving force behind his next move.
But he faces an impenetrable roadblock, because Zayn is walking around with absolute divine protection.
The mechanics of this world dictate that Zayn's aura is essentially hard-coded by higher powers.
Yes, he has a counterspell for every hex, an antidote for every localized curse. Tamura's most devastating magical artillery is just completely useless against him.
Which forces the dark pivot.
Yes. For you listening, it's kind of like being a cornered chess player, right?
Yeah.
Like, you realize you can't checkmate the king directly, so you target the most emotionally valuable piece on the board instead.
That is a perfect analogy. He targets Lila, an innocent handmaiden who matters deeply to Zayn.
And the plan is just horrifyingly calculated. He intends to magically compel Lila to walk out of the royal harem, sever her head, and then get...
It is so gruesome, but it highlights a critical limitation of divine protection in this lore.
Oh, how so?
Well, Zayn's shield is entirely defensive and physical. It guards his body and repels direct magical assaults, but it cannot protect his empathy.
Wow, right. It can't extend this umbrella of safety over everyone he cares about.
Exactly. Tamuras weaponizes the hero's capacity for love.
Yeah.
He understands that to shatter an unstoppable opponent, you circumvent the magical defenses and attack the human vulnerability.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the mechanics of how Tamuras actually executes this, the how, is just as chilling as the why.
Oh, completely.
He has this grand design to control Lila's soul, but his magic requires a biological tether. He needs an anchor to make the enchantment stick.
Right, specifically a single strand of her hair.
Which brings us to sympathetic magic.
Yes, we are seeing a very literal application of sympathetic magic here. It basically operates on the principle that a fragment of a person contains the resonant frequency of the whole.
So you can't just like cast a wide net into the ether and commandeer someone's brain.
No, not at all. You need a physical conduit to bridge the gap between the sorcerer's will and the victim's free agency.
But I struggle with how easily this bridging actually happens in the narrative. I mean, Lila lives in the royal harem, which is a heavily fortified sanctuary. Men are strictly forbidden.
It is incredibly secure.
Yet the younger of Tamuras's two disciples manages this magical heist with surprising ease. He disguises himself as a withered, harmless old woman, poses as a silk merchant, and sets up shop at the eastern gate.
It does feel a bit easy at first glance, right?
Yeah, it feels almost like a cheat code that this ancient sorcery can bypass heavily armed guards just by putting on some flowing clothes and talking in a high-pitched voice.
Well, it seems simple, but the infiltration relies heavily on social engineering rather than brute magical force.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because wards and guards are designed to repel obvious threats, right? Armed men, aggressive spells, hostile intent. The disciple bypasses these by cloaking his malice in mundanity.
Right, he's just selling silks.
Exactly. But more importantly, there is a psychological warding at play within the harem itself.
The princesses.
Yes. When the disguised disciple first arrives on day one, he asks the royal princesses about Lila. And the princesses dismiss her completely.
They flash this arrogant smile and essentially say, like, don't worry about that ordinary handmaiden. We're the ones buying your luxury goods.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that their arrogance actually acts as a psychic buffer.
Wait, really? So their vanity literally protects them?
Yes. Dark magic of this parasitic nature requires a pliable, trusting, or at least open aura to take root.
Oh, wow.
The princess's rigid, self-obsessed narcissism creates this closed-loop aura. They are so focused on their own status that a subtle, probing magical intent just slides right off them.
That makes perfect sense of the second day's events then. The disciple realizes he can't penetrate their ego wall, so he leans into it.
He adapts.
Yeah, he uses heavy flattery to lower their guard. He brings out these rare polished mirrors from Aleppo and exquisite fine-toothed combs from Syria.
He essentially feeds their vanity to create a distraction, and that isolates Lila, who doesn't share that protective layer of arrogance.
Lila's vulnerability is her innocence.
Precisely. She doesn't possess the cynical guards of the nobility, so when the disciple offers to show her the proper, elegant way of dressing her hair, she just sees a harmless elder offering a moment of maternal care.
It is just chilling when you look at the architecture of his plan. Like the vibrant, mundane life of the harem women trading silks, laughing, sharing a sense of community. He weaponizes that perfectly against them.
He turns their safe space into a trap.
Using a silver comb and a soft word to pluck the biological tether he needs. He doesn't break their defenses. He politely asks them to open the door.
And once that tether is secured, the narrative gives us this sharp contrast between two vastly different modes of existence.
The split-screen effect.
Exactly. The disciple rushes the strand of hair back to the ruined temple, and we see the rigid transactional nature of Tamuras's power.
The juxtaposition is striking. Down in this subterranean cellar, beneath the monolithic idol of Nergal, Tamuras is bound by hyper-specific material requirements.
He places Lila's hair on a flat stone slab.
He has to draw a stark crimson circle around it. He lights frankincense, chants forbidden incantations, and tosses a specific white powder onto the embers to create this thick, twisting smoke.
It is the absolute definition of ingredient-based mechanical sorcery. Tamuras's magic is essentially a complex legal contract with dark forces.
He has to follow the exact procedures to manufacture his outcome.
Right. And meanwhile, miles away in the sunlit palace, Lila is simply embroidering floral patterns onto silk.
And when the spell hits, it's described as an invisible fire kindled in her veins. She tries to drink water, but the magic completely overrides her autonomic systems.
It's like someone hijacked the radio frequency of her nervous system.
Yeah, like being a passenger in a self-driving car where the brakes have been cut. Her brain is screaming to stay there, but the magic forcibly commandeers her muscles. She just walks blindly out of the harem, straight to the ruined temple.
She becomes a prisoner within her own physical form, and this strips away the very agency she had recently fought so hard to protect.
Which brings up a crucial piece of her backstory. Because Zayn realizes later why Tamara's targeted her specifically.
The decree from the priesthood?
Right, Lila had previously refused a decree by the sorcerers to burn herself alive beside her dead husband. She defied a horrific, systemic expectation.
So Tamura's spell isn't just about hurting Zayn, it is a targeted, thematic punishment.
She exercised her free will to defy the old order, so his magic forcibly strips her of that free will. He locks her in a windowless, cobweb-filled cell to await execution at dawn.
When the morning star climbs, he believes his elaborate ritual has perfectly isolated her.
But this is where the hierarchy of power in this universe completely shifts. Tamura's has all this elaborate ancient ritual magic, yet when Lila snaps out of her trance inside that pitch-black cell, she does something completely immaterial. She presses her hands together and prays fervently to the Almighty. And instantly, miles away, Zayn wakes up with a jarring certainty that she is in mortal peril.
It completely exposes the fundamental shallowness of Tamura's power.
What does that say about the hierarchy of power here?
Well, think about it. He spent days orchestrating a ritual requiring subterranean temples, ancient idols, crimson circles, biological tethers. Yet Lila's simple, sincere prayer bypasses all of those heavy magical wards instantaneously.
Wow. Yeah, it tells us that the soul operates on an entirely different frequency than transactional magic.
Exactly. Tamura's can hijack the nervous system, but his rigid sorcery cannot perceive, let alone sever, her spiritual connection to the divine.
It establishes a clear cosmological hierarchy. Material magic controls matter, but spiritual resonance transcends it completely.
However, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this revelation is paired with a deeply tragic irony regarding Zayn.
Right, because Zayn gets the spiritual alarm, but his response is painfully terrestrial. He searches the palace, he runs through the streets, he listens at the crossroads.
He exhausts himself physically.
Yeah, he ends up collapsed on a sand dune outside the city limits, entirely helpless.
It underscores the difference between defensive grace and offensive omniscience. Zayn's divine shield keeps him alive, but it doesn't give him a radar to find her.
His human limitations are still there. And with him physically exhausted on a dune, Lila is seemingly without hope.
Trapped with a master sorcerer waiting for dawn.
Which sets the stage for one of the most brilliant subversions of a mythology trope I have literally ever seen.
Oh, this part is amazing.
Zayn is out of the picture. Lila is weeping in the dark, and suddenly she hears a long, heavy hiss echoing in the cell.
In the gloom, lit only by a dying wall torch.
She sees the muscular loops of a colossal serpent taking up the entire floor. It has giant, glowing, ruby-red, cat-like eyes locked onto her.
Now, in almost any other folklore or fantasy setting, a giant subterranean snake dwelling in the ruined temple of a dark god is the final boss monster.
Exactly. You'd expect it to just devour her.
It's the apex terror meant to eat the innocent before the hero arrives to slay it.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The expectation is entirely shattered. The monster doesn't unhinge its jaw. It speaks to her with this deep, resonant eloquence.
The legendary Serpent King, sovereign lord of all serpent kind.
Yes. And he tells her he heard her weeping from the deep places of the earth, and his heart wept tears of blood for her sorrow. I mean, how does this reshape our understanding of monsters in this lore?
It fundamentally redefines the concept of monstrosity. We are conditioned to associate monstrosity with fangs, scales, and the dark places beneath the earth.
Right.
But this universe argues that true monstrosity is the violation of free will. It's the cold, calculated cruelty of the human sorcerer, Tamurus.
Oh, that is so profound.
The Serpent King, despite his terrifying aesthetic, embodies a fierce primordial empathy. The earth itself weeps for the innocent. It suggests that benevolent forces don't always arrive in shining armor.
Sometimes they take the shape of an apex predator.
Exactly.
So Lila warns him about the sorcerer's dark magic outside, and the Serpent King is almost amused. He says no mortal sorcery can prevail against him.
And he proves it immediately.
With one strike of his massive tail, he shatters the heavy iron door, splintering its hinges like twigs and blowing it completely out of its stone frame.
That physical strike is a thematic rejection of Tamurus's complex magic. The sorcerer relied on locks and meticulous planning. The Serpent King relies on unbridled, mythical force.
So the noise naturally wakes Tamurus. He bolts upright, sees his captive walking out with a mythical snake, and he attempts to cast a devastating hex.
But there is no grand magical duel here.
None at all. Moving with lightning speed, the Serpent King lunges and bites Tamurus' head off mid-syllable.
He swallows him down to the neck.
It is a beautifully abrupt end. All of Tamurus' plotting, his elaborate rituals, his monologuing extinguished in a fraction of a second.
And the sheer kinetic force of that strike triggers a localized earthquake. Dust and mortar rain from the ceiling.
And the two cowardly disciples just flee into the night, right?
They drop their magical charms and run, which perfectly mirrors the opening of the story. Tamurus' power was always built on fear, never on genuine loyalty. Once the fear is consumed, his foundation crumbles instantly.
So, the threat is neutralized. The Serpent King escorts Lila out of the subterranean ruins and into the open air. But as they reach the edge of the plains, he stops.
Right at the boundary.
He explains that his earthly dominion reaches its end there, and that old laws forbid him from crossing into the wider human world. He tells Lila to call his name if calamity ever strikes again, and then just dissolves into the air like mist.
That specific limitation is a vital piece of world building.
How so?
Well, we just witnessed a godlike entity casually decapitate a master sorcerer and shatter iron doors. He appears entirely omnipotent. But if a magic system is going to function logically, omnipotence requires strict boundaries.
Otherwise, there are no stakes for the human characters, right? He could just slither into the royal court and solve every geopolitical problem.
Precisely. A boundless god in a narrative quickly becomes a tyrant of the plot. The concept of these old laws grounds the mythology. The sovereign lord of serpent kind must respect the natural order of the universe.
His domain is the deep earth. He can't just march across the plains.
These ancient rules ensure that human beings, despite these massive supernatural forces, still have to navigate and take responsibility for their own world.
So what does this all mean for you listening? When we pull back and look at the entire arc of this source material, we're left with a deeply resonant exploration of vulnerability.
We really are.
We see how the architecture of vengeance often bypasses the strong to crush the innocent. We see how arrogance can ironically serve as a shield, while innocence leaves a person porous to manipulation.
But ultimately, it's a story about where we find our rescue.
Exactly. We expect our designated heroes like Zayn to be the ones who save the day. Yet sometimes, despite their immense power, they end up exhausted on a sand dune, unable to reach us.
And in those moments of profound isolation, when cruelty has locked us in the dark, salvation doesn't always come from the light.
Sometimes it comes from the shadows we were taught to fear. It forces a complete reevaluation of the forces at play in this universe.
But it also leaves us with a massive, lingering question to mull over.
Oh, the old laws.
Yes. The Serpent King specifically cited old laws that stopped him at the edge of the plains. If a primordial entity powerful enough to casually execute a master sorcerer is strictly bound by ancient orders drawn in the dirt, we have to ask who or what originally drew those lines.
That is such a good question. And what happens to the fragile balance of power in the human realm now that an ordinary, mortal handmaiden holds a permanent, direct line to the sovereign of the underworld?
It changes everything going forward.
It really does. Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us in exploring the dark, unexpected corners of the Serpent King.